You're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Before we start today, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast. It helps us get out there so much. And if you're interested, we have the full video version of this on YouTube. This episode is sponsored by Big Tech's Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. They value firearms training so much that they support firearms instructors nationwide and pay for their own staff to train with these high-level instructors to ensure that when you as the consumer reach out, you are taken care of. Today we have Trevor Blue on the podcast. Trevor, I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, by the way, Sofia, for having me on. It's a great opportunity. My name is Trevor Blue. I'm a shooting coach originally from Indiana. I moved out to Arizona to pursue a career. I've been working in the gun industry for 6 years now. Currently, I run my own company called SkillBased, and we're a training company, a mobile training company, amongst other things that we have in the works. But I'm also a former Division I athlete, which I use some of the principles that I learned while I was in college to train myself in, shooting. And I take that same approach with people as I coach them through my courses. So wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate how well-rounded you are, and we share a common interest / educational background. We are both students and graduates of the study of kinesiology. Was yours specifically like kinesiology, exercise science as well?
Yeah, I had a my other form of study was actually psychology too. So I have a minor in psychology.
Well, okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you know just enough to get you in trouble, I've heard, is what that means.
That's exactly what that means.
Yeah. People are really strange now, I'm sure. Okay. Well, how cool. I'm sure that whole combination is so lovely for what you are doing and the changes that you're trying to make in our industry. So very happy to have you on today. And I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, Trevor and I have had a chance to have a pre-show chat, and the topics today are some that I'm personally very passionate about. And some of them are things that I'm just ready to learn about and I have questions about, which we kind of discussed before this. So let's get started. So where did your journey begin? You mentioned being an athlete. So if you don't mind, take us down the roadmap.
Yeah. So I guess technically my journey, the shooting journey, started in 2015 when I was in the Navy. So I'm a veteran. I was a gunner's mate for 4 years in the U.S. Navy. And that's a jack of all trades. For those who don't know what a gunner's mate is, it's a jack of all trades for all things ordnance. You could be loading nuclear missiles onto a submarine, which is I did some of that. You could be a firearms instructor, which I did some of that. And part of my job was making sure the crew of about 600 people were qualified in all the guns. So the crew serve guns, the belt feds and stuff like that, the handguns, shotguns, rifles. And as a young gunner's mate, I thought that I knew a thing or two about shooting, specifically shooting performance, because I was the instructor. And I'll never forget this guy. He was a CB who was an expeditionary SAMI, which is a small arms marksman instructor. And he crushed our course of fire, which it's not that hard to do. It's like 2 rounds in 4 seconds, something like that, on a huge target. He probably didn't come out of like a 4-inch circle for the whole thing, for like all the way out to 25 yards. And so I was periodically giving him, tips like, hey, you should do this. And just him being a confident guy and me being like 19, he's like, okay. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. And I didn't know he was like a masterclass shooter at the time. And I'm like, okay, yeah, well, whatever. He's a Mr. Know-It-All. And I asked to go shooting with him. And we went shooting a couple times. And some of the things he was asking me to do, just basic things like a bill drill or like El Prez, I couldn't even do it. And that's when I realized, you suck at shooting. Like, really, really bad. I was still flinching, anticipating the recoil of the gun, slapping the trigger. I had a terrible grip, bad stance, all the things. And it was a beautiful moment for me because it opened me up to this world of shooting. And so that's where it started for me, is realizing I didn't really know anything. And I started training on the island I was forward deployed from Guam. So on Guam, I would essentially, the excess ammo that we had, I would use that to train. I would just use that to train periodically, but I really didn't know what I was doing. So I was basically just wasting ammo in the middle of the jungle, just blasting away. And it wasn't until I went to school for kinesiology and also wrestling that I really started to hone things in. And I didn't have any money as a broke college student, so I was donating plasma. I was telling you guys about this the other day, and I would go to a plasma clinic. You know, it's like 2 hours to get my plasma drawn, and they paid me like $75, and I would go buy 200 or 250 rounds from Walmart next door, and I would just go train, and I would do that 2 or 3 times a week, and that's how I paid for my shooting, which is kind of one of the reasons why, you know, I pursued this writing endeavor. You know, the book that I just came out with is another reason why I came out with that book. But it's just it's been a really long but enjoyable process, and you know, that's kind of my start. And here I am, 12 years later from when I started. Hopefully, still have just as much to learn. In fact, I think I do have just as much to learn.
How incredible. Well, thank you, first of all, for your service. And secondly, for sharing that story and being vulnerable enough to share that you found where your weaknesses were and you had to kind of come face to face with that. I wish that everyone kind of did that in this industry. It'd be great. But absolutely. And then saying that you even have more to learn is lovely. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. As far as the book, you've already mentioned it, so let's talk about it. So the Concealed Carry Field Guide. This is really exciting, guys. By the time this episode releases, we're either releasing this, 1 to 3 weeks from now. Where can people find your book once this is live, or maybe once it's just ready to go?
It's available on Amazon. So right now it's actually live technically right now. You can buy it on Amazon. You could buy it in the soft cover, a paperback, or a ebook form. So whatever your preference. If you have Kindle, I think you can get it for pretty, I think it's like $2 or something like that.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to keep costs low because the idea of the book was to bring a training experience to somebody's house, because training's expensive. You and I both know it can cost a lot of money to go out to these classes, and it's well worth it, but not everybody can do that. I was one of those people where I wanted to go to an esoteric class or a Haley class or a carry trainer class, but I couldn't because it was thousands of dollars, not just the ammunition and the tuition. Tuition for a 2-day class could be anywhere between, like $400 to $600, and then an Airbnb or a rental car or a plane ticket, groceries. I mean, it adds up. It's a lot of money. And so I wanted to give somebody that was, that is in the same situation that I was in 10 years ago, the same, financially, incapable of paying for training. I wanted to give them the same opportunities as somebody who could afford to go to training. So that's really the inspiration for the book.
Absolutely. Well, I know I appreciate that very much. Part of why I started sharing my journeys, because I feel like there were some gaps there. So I love that you're doing that in this written form. And I have read the book, for those listening, which I enjoyed very much. I told Trevor, I learned a lot from it. I went through, there were some things I didn't know about, like the condition of your firearm and the way that you should communicate the condition of your firearm when you say loaded. I know that that's been a form of miscommunication between my training buddies and I in the past. And of course, you always check your firearm before doing anything, so you figure it out eventually. But to be able to communicate more clearly is a safety measure, and you really cover all of the bases. And I think my favorite part of it is that you're opening the door for people to ask questions and to find where their gaps in knowledge are, so that they can go and seek out more, instead of just kind of throwing money at courses that maybe aren't the best solution for their problem. So I really appreciate that. So, and you're doing some exciting things with it. Would you like to share some upcoming
stuff?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure. So we're doing a giveaway is what Sophia's talking about. We're doing a giveaway. We're giving away concealed carry starter kits. So I have some awesome friends in the industry and a few companies that I work with, and we won't name names right now. Obviously, okay. Sophia is one of them. And me, so you get two. But I have some awesome friends, and we're doing a giveaway. Hopefully, I think we're going to have about 10 kits to be giving away to our audiences, and really, it's just to provide, again, that value to our communities and to spread the word. We want to promote good businesses. We want to promote good products. That's what we're always after. And so, kicking off the launch of this book, we're going to be giving away let's not ruin the surprise. Let's not ruin the surprise of what's in the kit, but everything to get you started. And it's a pretty high dollar value thing, and I'm excited to do it, because, again, these things weren't always available. We've come a long way in the industry. So, yeah. And that'll be probably towards the end of this month, or probably right around when this podcast is actually launching.
Absolutely. So. Yes, and Trevor has told me a little bit about what is in the kit, and it's exciting stuff. So I'm excited for the official announcement. Keep an eye out. I'll have all of Trevor's socials linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. So if you want to go ahead and follow him there, turn on your notifications so you get notified for the giveaway details, I would do that personally, but that's just me. All right. So as far as I'd love to just dive into the concealed carry topic a little bit with you. There are some really cool topics today that we'll get into as well. But for someone maybe just getting started, would you give us a little kind of like taste of what is in the book as far as some first steps to take getting started in concealed carry?
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on where you are, and in the book, I lay out where you might fall. Someone who's brand new, somebody who's a beginner, or somebody who's a novice is how I've classified it. And, you could be somebody that's never touched a gun in your life. You could be somebody that literally, is afraid to pick up an unloaded gun, and that's normal. That's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with a healthy dose of fear when it comes to handling firearms. But it's also important to, still be able to build some confidence. And I think where you first start off when you're brand new, this is your first gun, is loading and unloading. Loading and unloading and getting safe, because it gives you the confidence that you need to know that that gun can't hurt you, or that it's in a condition where it could hurt you. And when you get comfortable loading and unloading and checking the status of your gun, that gives you a really big boost in confidence. And once you get comfortable there, then it's moving into all of the marksmanship fundamentals. I would personally recommend grip. Your grip is the most important fundamental when it comes to shooting. And it takes a lot of time and just consistent effort to build your grip, and so that it feels right, because you could be doing the right things with your grip visually, or even, physically with your hands, and it not feel correct. That's natural. It takes time to develop that confidence with any skill. So as far as a beginner or someone that's brand new to shooting, that's where I would start. And if you're somebody who's owned a gun for a long time, and maybe you take it to the range every once in a while, once a month, and you shoot 50 rounds or something like that, I would be focusing on my shooting fundamentals. I would be focusing on my grip, my trigger press, drawing from a holster. If you don't have a holster, I'd be buying a holster, a quality Kydex appendix, or just some kind of inside the waistband. Not outside the waistband unless it's, wintertime. And that's another thing that we kind of go in the book of kind of the what's and whys and hows for concealed carry. Because I'm not against most things out there. I'm not really against them. You just have to understand that there's pros and cons, the benefits and the negative sides of choice of gun, choice of holster, choice of position. If I have a leather shoulder holster and I'm wearing a suit, that might work out just fine. If I'm wearing a polo and shorts and I have an outside the waistband Kydex holster, that might not be such a good idea, and for someone that might not know, is because we don't want to, tell the general public, but specifically bad people, that, hey, we're armed. That's the idea behind concealed carry, is we maintain the element of surprise, which is actually a pretty important factor. The element of surprise is a pretty important factor when you're dealing with a potentially dangerous situation. So that's where I would personally start as a new shooter. And you cannot get too much dry fire in. I say that, kind of semi-seriously. You don't want to be doing like 6 hours a day, but if it's purposeful, if it's intentional, there's nothing wrong with getting. I used to dry fire for 2 hours a night.
Wow. That's a lot. That's awesome.
I had a whole thing, and I was a little different. I'm a bit of an aggressive learner when it comes to certain things,
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
But consistency is paramount. Absolutely.
Yeah, your book has a lot of great tips. If someone were to just purchase, if your book could go out with, every first gun owner's gun, we'd have a safer world. And I think it would offer some clarity, especially with what you can do with such little resources, just some snap caps or rubber bullets, whatever you want to call them, to learn how to load your magazine without live ammunition, to just learn that process and gain the confidence to then move on to live ammo. On a range, pointed down range, all that fun safety stuff. But yeah, I love that you are bringing attention to that. As far as your training company goes, I would love for you to talk about why your company is called SkillBased SelfReliance Training. Is there anything you'd like to share there? Yeah.
So my philosophy on skills, and there's more to follow this, but my skill sets are unique and specific to me. We said it before. I'm a shooting coach, so my skill sets in shooting to teach other people, they have a place where I can share experience, but I'm not somebody that, has any experience blacksmithing or, extensive experience horseback riding or doing, skydiving. I want to, but I share the belief, that our skills are what separate us from what we want in life and where we are in life. Developing your skill sets, whether you're a finance guy, an IT guy, a shooting instructor, a wrestling coach, doesn't matter what you are. How good you are at what you do is what's separating you from the most things that you want in life. So I am a huge proponent in developing skill sets, which is why my company is called SkillBased, is because that's what it's really about. It's not called luck-based or chance-based, even though maybe that might be the case for some dangerous situations, but life's more, and this is where I think I'm a little different than the average guy in the shooting world, is it's not all about guns for me. Guns are just a part of the equation. Granted, I've heard people say, well, it's the only part that I can't mess up. Yeah, I can't mess up driving my 6,000-pound truck on the highway. Like if I mess that up, then I get hurt or get killed or kill someone. I can't mess up a tourniquet when it matters most. I can't mess up. Walking down the stairs, I can't mess up. If I miss a step and fall and break my leg, there's all kinds of things. So I know I'm being a bit exaggerative, but there's way more to self-preparedness, self-reliance than just guns. And let's look at history. Like the men who built this country, they weren't just gunslingers. Like they were blacksmiths, they were farmers. There's all carpenters. There's all kinds of professions, and I think being well-rounded is something that I do, pretty well, and it's something that I want to continue to be, is well-rounded and capable. That's what's important to me. So my area of expertise is grappling and shooting, but in the future we're gonna have some pretty interesting guests come on the show and come on, for the training cycle too, because we're going to be adding things that I think are important to self-reliance. So that is where we are so far with the company and what we're offering right now. Lovely.
Yes, I love to hear it all about that grappling life for sure. Yeah. My background, of course, is in JiuJitsu. So I would love to hear why wrestling. I know it's like a really general question, but for those that don't really understand the difference between the various grappling arts, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I am a wrestler and I'm always going to be biased for wrestling, but I think that wrestling, just from a longevity standpoint, from our health standpoint, I think you can stay healthier, and you have to modify wrestling just like you have to in jiu-jitsu. You could do jiu-jitsu well into, there's people that do jiu-jitsu into their 80s, or 90s. There's members of the Gracie family, but they also have a lot of experience, and they know how to manipulate their body, and they've also changed their style to work around injuries and such. I think jiu-jitsu is fantastic. I practice jiu-jitsu. For me, wrestling is the most effective, excuse me, combat sport, in my opinion, for controlling someone in a self-defense scenario. And there's multiple different aspects of self-defense, striking being one of them, defense for striking, probably a little bit more important than the offense. But I think wrestling's the most effective means for grappling, protection. And I don't think, and again, I'm biased, I don't think there's any other martial art out there that's better for control when it comes to putting somebody on the ground and keeping them there, and that's why wrestling for me. But also there's more to wrestling in terms of, the stand-up, and jiu-jitsu's changing. There's a lot of really great schools that are like, hey, if you don't wrestle, like, you're not getting your black belt. There's a ton of great schools out there, out on the East Coast, some people that I know. But it's an important part of any well-rounded martial arts, training regime is wrestling, along with, other areas. My background is wrestling. I love the sport. It's the hardest sport, in my opinion. And a lot of these people, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson, I don't know if you follow him, but I
do not yet.
He's a physicist. He's a pretty renowned physicist.
I don't follow him on. Do you mean on social media, or just follow his journey?
Yeah, just pure. So he was. Oh shit, was he a Harvard graduate? He's an Ivy Leaguer. I think Harvard. I can't. I honestly, I have to look this up now. But no, he was a wrestler on the Harvard.
Oh.
On their wrestling team. Actually, I'm not
cool.
even. Yeah, I'm not even. Now that I think about it, I don't even know. I would have to look that up and fact check that. Where did he go to school?
It looks like, studied at Harvard.
Yeah.
University of Texas and Columbia.
Okay, so he was on the wrestling team at Harvard, I think.
That's really cool. I did not know that.
Yeah. So he's a bad dude, but he's also a genius.
Right.
Which is probably one of the more scary combinations you can have, is somebody that's physically capable and intelligent on multiple scale, multiple, So I don't know. That's why wrestling for me, though, is there's so much to the sport. It's so much more I was talking to somebody actually about this fairly recently. They're like, what do you think's harder, shooting or wrestling? And I was like, wrestling. It's not. Shooting's really simple. It's not easy. It's not easy in the sense that there's still things, that are difficult to do at speed, at full speed, the kind of precision that you have to have, the correct angles with your hands or your elbow. You can mess it up really easily, but it's not complex. Wrestling's complex. It can get very complex. There's things that happen before, they actually happen, that are happening before you even realize it. There's traps, there's setups, there's counters. It's just like jiu-jitsu, just like any martial art. It can get, there's levels, there's levels to shooting, but yeah, it's a very complex sport. And so, and I think if you can wrestle, you can do anything. I really believe that.
No, that makes sense. I actually have done a little bit of wrestling. During my Muay Thai days.
Oh yeah.
That's actually how I broke my nose, the third time. So before my first nose surgery, I got elbowed just straight across the face. But anyway, we combined Muay Thai and wrestling, and I always felt the most prepared for street defense when I was doing that combination, because my strikes were so effective. They had to be. I was training for fights. I had to fight people to prep, so I knew what I could do, with different body types and everything. But wrestling was intense. I remember being I miss jiu-jitsu because wrestling was just it was on another level. But I think having a well-rounded opinion like yours is not a well-rounded opinion, a well-rounded kind of background and experience to be able to speak on it. I appreciate you sharing that. I know Craig Douglas, for example, with ShivWorks, he's big into Greco-Roman wrestling. I mean, if you're a jiu-jitsuist and you go to his class, you're better off than someone who hasn't done any grappling, of course. But he talks about things that we don't talk about as much. And of course, it depends on the gym you go to. I know my jiu-jitsu gym is a competition-based gym, so there's a lot of pulling guard, whereas that's not something that is super accurate, So, but yeah, I appreciate you sharing that perspective. If someone's listening and they don't know where to get started, are there like actual wrestling gyms you can join typically, or is it something that you can only really do if you're part of a college or university?
You can. There's some adult, but they're few and far in between. It's way more common to find jiu-jitsu gyms. I have a friend who started an adult wrestling club in Colorado, and I don't know if it's still there. But okay. And in fact, I can't remember the name of it.
If you think of it, we'll link it in the show notes later.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If I was an adult and I wanted to get involved in wrestling somehow, I would go find an MMA gym because there's going to be a wrestling coach there. And I would ask them, if you wanted to do privates or something like that, or if they had any interest in adult classes, just ask if that's something. And if they said no, I would try and go to a high school or a local college and go somewhere where I don't want to say they have let me word this correctly. Go somewhere where they are willing to accept you as a coach, where you don't necessarily have to be knowledgeable on the sport of wrestling. You more so need to be a chaperone and be there and ask those guys and see if they, because you could be someone who has no background. I know guys in middle school coaching and high school coaching that have no background in wrestling, but they're good dudes. They're trustworthy. They have a good message to share with kids, and they care about the school and they want those kids to succeed. So they get involved in the wrestling program. They end up learning the sport of wrestling, and they're a coach. So it's kind of a twofold thing. I would check that out and be a volunteer coach for high school or middle school. But other than that, there's online training that you could get. You could do was it BJJ Fanatic? You and a friend could get some mats for relatively cheap, go to a basement and start rolling around and start practicing. There's a ton of resources out there. And just depending on how serious you are, like if you're like, I want to wrestle, I guarantee you can find somebody that would give you pretty cheap private lessons that used to be a high school state champ, or something like that. And those guys are itching. I promise you, they are itching to get on the mat and wrestle again.
Yeah.
Because it's like an addiction. So. Are
you itching for it right now? Or where do you go to train? Like, how do you keep it up?
Dude. I had a knee surgery about a year ago, and I'm still not all the way there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not all the way there. I don't have all the way. Yeah, and you don't. So I had my shoulder redone. I've got a plate in my shoulder with some screws in there, like 11 screws, and that was nothing. 6 weeks, and I was out of a sling, and I think I was out of a sling in 2 weeks. And after 6 weeks, I was fine. I was totally good. A few months, I was pretty much back to where, back to regular. This knee thing is not a joke. Knee injuries are way, in my opinion, from the 2 cases that I have, this has been way harder. And so I'm back on the mats, but in a limited capacity. Sure. I do a lot of outside steps, and I put my injured leg down on the mat, because if I take a penetration step, what's called you're doing a shot,
right, and
I bend it too far, it hurts. So I do just a lot of hand fighting, with the heavyweights and stuff like that. They like to hand fight, so that's most of their game anyways. So I do a lot of that stuff, and rehab. That's how I kind of keep active. But I coach at a college, at a Christian university here in Arizona. I've been coaching out here for 3 years, and I've been with this is my second year at Arizona Christian. So it's been good. Cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's fun.
Wonderful. Are you in search of top-notch gear that exceeds your expectations? Look no further than GPS, brought to you by Go Outdoors Incorporated. GPS has been dedicated to crafting the finest products for hunting and shooting since 2002. As someone who frequents the gun range, my GPS bag is a staple to safely and effectively haul my gear. My personal favorite is the GPS Tall Range Backpack, which makes walking USPSA stages simple and organized. Their specialized bags are designed to keep all of my valuable equipment secure and organized. With GPS, you can experience the ultimate peace of mind. There are 3 exciting product lines: GPS Tactical, GPS Wild About Hunting, and GPS Wild About Shooting provide the perfect solution for your specific needs. So whether you're on a hunting expedition or hitting the range, GPS is your reliable companion. To find a bag that fits your needs, use code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20, to save and to support the pod. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout. Yeah, and you're not you said you've done jiu-jitsu. Are you training it regularly right now?
I'm not. I have a
Okay.
good friend who's a black belt, and he's a multi world champion who I work with.
Amazing.
He's a really good buddy of mine, and we train mostly wrestling. But if I were to go back into the jiu-jitsu world, I would probably just go under him, and I would learn from him. I've been to 2 different jiu-jitsu gyms where I was a member, and just with work. And honestly, jiu-jitsu is expensive. Like it's $200 a month, I think I was paying.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
It's a lot of money, and it's worth it, but
is.
the position that I was in with work, I was going like 3 times a month, and I couldn't justify
and it's not worth it. Yeah.
So I'd be on a plane every other week, and it was just too hard for me to make it. It was 40 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
So, but
some gyms will offer, if they know you don't come in as often, they'll either allow you to pay per class, or you can ask them if you could just pay at a discounted rate for a certain number of classes.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have quite a few friends that have utilized that. And then if you really can't afford it, sometimes you can talk to them about some under the table deals, trading, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those gyms are usually really understanding, and of course you don't want to take advantage of it if you can afford it, but I mean, I've helped a lot of people. I've guided people to at least ask that question in the past. Because it's not cheap. And then of course, like buying a good gi is, that's at least $100 to $200 investment depending on the brand. And then if you go multiple nights a week, you have to wash it every night. And if you don't go in.
Yeah. No.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I stopped doing gi. Like I started with the gi, and I stopped doing it. I like no gi. I like,
I prefer no gi.
Yeah, I like no gi.
I think it's more practical. I don't know. I both are, because I mean, we're always wearing clothing normally. I mean,
Yeah.
So
there's different schools of thought, and I don't think any of them are wrong, and I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy. Like I can't say like this is, I've been wrestling and grappling in a mixed capacity for 20 years,
right,
give or take a little more. But like, if you're a jiu-jitsu no-gi guy, you could be a pretty high level. And here's a great example. If you know who Nick Rodriguez is, and I know he's kind of the exception, not the rule, but you could get a really strong, really athletic, competent grappler, and he can compete. He can make it competitive at a very high level with very little jiu-jitsu no-gi experience. If you go into the gi and you're strong and athletic and you try and make it competitive, you're not going to get very far. Because experienced, gi players, they have so many more options to control you when it comes to, positions like on the ground, not so much in the stand-up, but on the ground, like you're pretty helpless against a very experienced, black belt. Like there's nothing I could have done. Like my speed and power meant almost nothing in the gi. And when I was, doing no gi stuff, there wasn't too many people that could match pace, intensity when it comes to like takedown defense and stuff like that. But, I digress.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I appreciate you being willing to speak to those differences. I know before I ever got into that world, I didn't know where to start. And I honestly didn't even know there was no-gi until I saw a class one day. So I appreciate you bringing that to light, and encouraging people to get into that. Would you want to speak about the kind of crossover of hand-to-hand combat and grappling to self-protection and concealed carry, as far as like some people think if they carry a gun, they don't need anything else? What are your opinions on that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And my opinion again, and I'll beat a dead horse, because if it's important, you're supposed to say it more than once. You've got to be well-rounded. You cannot be just a good shooter. And other than just like a good shooter, you can't just be a good grappler or a good striker. I'm somebody that's going to be a proponent of more than just jiu-jitsu. And again, I'm biased, and I'm not saying that this is the case for all people who practice jiu-jitsu. So people on the internet can stow their opinions on this, but I know a lot of jiu-jitsu guys that are wimps. Like they're purple belts or brown belts, and they're really good. And what people who are inexperienced, and this is again my opinion, who are inexperienced in the fighting, grappling, etc. world will say is, oh, I'm a jiu-jitsu this, or this guy's a jiu-jitsu that. And like, yeah, I mean, that's true. You're more prepared as a purple belt or a blue belt, or a brown belt or black belt as a jiu-jitsu guy. Do not get this crossed over, though. Don't mistake this. That doesn't mean you know how to fight. It doesn't. I can promise you that. And Frank Mir, who's a former UFC heavyweight, a legend in the UFC community, he's got this phrase. He's like, everybody's a black belt, everybody's a white belt when they start getting punched in the face. And that is, like, there's some truth to that. And
Yes.
So I've had a few people tell me stories of high level, and we won't name any names, but high level jiu-jitsu players get the shit beat out of them. Like, so
Right.
Be respectful, be kind, walk away. That's another thing that we talk about in the book is tough guys and strong men. They're not the same. I can walk away. Like, I don't care how tough you are and how cool you are. I care about me and my family and the people that are with me. So, but jiu-jitsu is great, man. It's so good for a baseline level of capability. But again, don't get it twisted. There's more to it. If I was somebody preparing as the best I could to protect myself and others, I would go to mixed martial arts. I wouldn't go to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I wouldn't go to just wrestling or just boxing. I would go to mixed martial arts and spend a few years doing that. And it's going to suck. I mean, getting punched in the face isn't fun.
Yes. No, it's not. Yeah, I can confirm too, no surgeries later. It sucks, but also it's one of those things, once you do it, once you get punched in the face, you're like, oh, that's it. Like, your world doesn't end. You don't die, it just hurts.
Do you know who Travis Pastrana is? Have you ever heard that name?
I don't think so, no.
He's a professional dirt bike rider, a racer, and then he's kind of transitioned into a stuntman. He's got Guinness World Records for doing all kinds of crazy crap, but he's got a show, Nitro Circus, and he's just a crazy. I think he jumped out of a plane with no parachute, actually, into another plane. So, but he's got this awesome kind of philosophy, and it's if it's that painful, your body will shut down. And it's like, yes. And I can confirm that. Like, I've been in those blackout, can't feel a thing stages because you're so messed up. And the things that hurt really, really, really bad, like, your body has a way of dealing with it to where you don't feel it. I've broken a few things that have hurt pretty bad, but I've also been in scenarios where, like, and I'm not saying this is healthy, but your body has an amazing capacity to take care of itself.
Yes.
I've dislocated some fingers. Those have hurt worse than some of the more serious injuries I've had.
Really? I think that makes sense. The amount of, like, nerve endings that are there.
Yeah. Or like cauliflower ear.
Yeah.
That's some of the worst pain I've ever had.
Yeah.
Is cauliflower. Yeah. Like, it's not. And anybody that's had fresh, not like a little, kind of, but like, I had my whole ear was closed. That's how fat it was. Because my friend, if he listens to this, he'll laugh. Punched me in the ear. Oh. In the middle of practice when I was walking on. This was during my walk on at Purdue, and the coach, I'll never. Yeah.
Wait, why?
Huh? I was a walk on it. Oh, maybe I haven't told you this. I walked on to Purdue's wrestling team.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So when I got out of the Navy in
no biggie.
2000 and, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that. Okay. I had a terrible GPA. I had like a 1.6 GPA. Because in high school, they offered dual credit classes, and I was like, whatever, I'm not going to school. I'm going to the military. Fuck these classes. And so I basically failed them. Well, 5 years later, I go to apply to college because I want to be a collegiate athlete. That's like my next dream. And like, sorry, can't get in. Not smart enough. And I was like, awesome. So I had to go to community college, which there's no shame in this. You got to do what you have to do, and work hard. I pulled a 3.8 I pulled a 4.0 and then like a 3.6 or something like that the next semester.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, and I worked, and that whole, year process that's when I started learning how to shoot. That's when I started, training for wrestling. I was driving, to high school practice. And then when it came wintertime, I was kind of like doing a whole Rocky thing. I did a podcast with my friend Mickey like 4 years ago, actually, telling him about this.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, I'll have to listen to that. I love Mickey.
And so I was traveling, a lot for wrestling. I was working out alone, and I was doing dry fire in my basement. And so I spent that whole year just working and training. And then when I moved to Purdue, I still, my first year there, or was it my first semester? I still, like, the coaches were like, yeah, we don't, because they had a guy on the wrestling team that was a veteran who was kind of like a piece of shit. And which somebody that's unfamiliar with the military and veterans, that would maybe sound as a surprise, but they're out there. Every community has them,
Sure.
And they're not representative of all of us. That's just the truth. And so they said to me, they're like, yeah, we haven't had good experience with military guys. I was like, well, sounds like you've had some turds come through, which they did.
Yeah.
They did. So I spent, when I first got to Purdue, it was even harder because I still did the same thing, except then I was, instead of driving like 2 miles, to my high school, I was driving 70 miles to go to high school practice. To stay training and to get in shape, because when I walked onto the Purdue's team, I hadn't wrestled a match in like 7 years or something crazy like that. So, which is like another aspect of college wrestling where you don't realize, you forget how high level, how intense, the Division I level, the Big Ten level is. Like, I got the shit beat out of me many, 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 many times, which was fine. I enjoyed college wrestling. I thought it was really fun. A lot of guys struggled with it because and I was also older, I was 25 when I first, when I started. So, like, I had been overseas. I deployed a couple times. I worked real jobs. I'd had some actual life problems, lost some people. So it was a blessing and it was fun. College wrestling was hard, but it was fun. And so I enjoyed it. And so I don't know, where do we leave off and how did we get on this topic?
I asked you about how you continue to train wrestling, I believe. And then you told me about, I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess the point of all that just... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, the intersection of concealed carry and grappling. No, but this is great. I mean, it gives us more context into your answer.
Yeah, and so I guess kind of full circle that that is like, that's my background. That's how I came about. And when I just went through this kind of metamorphosis of training with wrestling and shooting, and it was really hard, but it was really enjoyable. Like, it was really, really fun because I love learning. I love to learn new things, and I love things that challenge me in a healthy way. There's some things that challenge me in a not so healthy way. I remember working at the last place that I worked, learning about IT stuff, and it's important because I have a website now, and I am forever grateful that my CTO taught me about, certain aspects, but it still is like, it's not fun. So, yeah. That's
absolutely.
That's kind of like a little sidebar about college wrestling and stuff like that.
No, I appreciate you speaking on that and bringing attention to it. Like I said, I don't think, especially in the gun world, the true gun world, I mean, I don't know a lot of content creators that show combatives in addition to firearms. It's usually just guns because guns are sexy, you know what I mean? Like, running and gunning really fast, or doing trick shots, or showing like a cutesy concealed carry outfit. I do all of those things except for the running fast part. I run and gun. I don't run fast and gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a difference. So all of that plus like the non-sexy side. So I love to show my jiu-jitsu with my helmet because that's not cool, man. Like, it's really funny when I'll film those roles and then I'll see in the background people being like, what is she doing? Right. And my partner and I, we add in striking and do some more like real life grappling together. And so that's really exciting. And I'm only at the very beginning of that journey because I took a long break away from it to let my nose heal. And I didn't know a helmet like those made by Red Beard Combatives existed. But after I started using that, it started to bring that back to me. And then I realized like it's so important to share that side of the journey and to encourage others to train no matter what, with whatever resources you can, whatever injuries you can, however you have to like compensate, and also communicate with your community about that. You know, I don't roll with just anyone now because my nose is made of glass. So I really love that we're having this conversation, and I love that you are a proponent of all of that. So.
Yeah, and that's super important with somebody that's getting into any martial art, is finding training partners that are going to take care of you and not hurt you. That's sort of a more advanced realization when you do it for a few years and you go like, oh, like I can get really hurt doing this. And so if you're somebody that's just starting out, be careful. I'm not saying don't be intense and intentional, but like be careful because you can hurt people. So that's such a good
100%.
point. Yeah.
And it's a bad feeling. It's a bad feeling when you do
gosh.
Yeah. I remember the first woman who broke my nose. I was comforting her. I was rubbing her back and she was bawling her eyes out, and I had this wad of paper towels just catching blood. Yeah. And I was just like in this multitasking thing because she felt so bad, and she was like, "You're going to be okay." Yeah, exactly.
You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. So
it's exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reliving it.
That's
exactly. So well, I'm so glad we got to talk about that. Do you think you'll ever teach classes with firearms? I know some of your courses, Everyday Pistol, Everyday Rifle, Everyday American, which I love that title. Yeah. And then you of course, do custom courses. But do you think you'll ever create a curriculum for combining grappling and weapons?
I will. I was talking to my good friend about this last night, actually. What we can do in 3 days with this thing is pretty remarkable when it comes to skill development and increasing performance. In 3 days, you could be like a completely new shooter. In 3 days with jiu-jitsu, striking, takedown defense, just etc., you'll be better, but it won't be as noticeable as with your shooting. At the end of a 3-day shooting course, you could feel like a completely different person. At the end of a 3-day jiu-jitsu, striking, etc. package, you'll be better, but you might almost feel worse. Like you almost might feel like, gosh, I didn't know there was so much to this. There's so,
yes.
And like you mentioned Craig Douglas, like I've never officially met Craig or his crew, but I love what they do. I really, really do. They do such an exceptional job at putting together simple, effective techniques in a system. And like, I'm going to take one of their classes just because I love what they do. And I don't have as much experience in the armed and specifically with the knife, with the bladed stuff, or vehicles, even inside of vehicle grappling. There's specific techniques that I've seen a ton of it, but I've never done it, and I want to learn that stuff too. And it's such a broad space. That's another thing, is grappling is such a broad space. You can have guys that are in judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, sambo, if you want to throw that one in there, I guess. That's a Russian thing. And which is the beautiful thing. I mean, there's so many different techniques, which is why a lot of high-level grapplers cross-pollinate, in different areas of the grappling world. But Craig Douglas, man, I love his stuff, and there's so much to do in that Everyday American course that I've decided to just narrow it down to a few techniques that are really important, and most of them are being able to stay on your feet, being able to what somebody would call break contact, but I'm just gonna constitute it as, describe it as hand fighting, which in wrestling is staying on your feet and getting people's hands off of you, or getting a controlling tie to eventually take somebody down. That's what I focus on in that curriculum, but it's a very broad spectrum, and it's an introduction to all the different things that are out there, because again, it's not just shooting. There's layers to shooting, just like there's layers to grappling, just like there's layers to hunting and survival and etc. And my goal, my intention with that class is to introduce people to stacking on top of the baseline skill. So you shoot a handgun, you've got your own handgun, but what does that look like at night? What does it look like around a vehicle? And the vehicle stuff is in and of itself a 3-day course. You could do 3 days just on vehicles. You could do a month on vehicles and still learn things and still take things away. But obviously with human, attention spans, with the learning curve, 3 days is a lot. I mean, it's a long 3 days, and going from daytime to nighttime, it's a lot. It's a lot to ask of people, and maintaining the attention and, the safety is the biggest thing, because once you start introducing guns and cars and people, you've got to be really methodical and really safe, because there's a lot going on. So that's what that course is really geared towards. And to answer your question in full, I don't know yet. I want to involve, the grappling components more, because it's super important. But right now we're just going to stick with the everyday American, with what it has in the curriculum, which is a very baseline, system. And we'll move on. I'm always open. I'm always open to progression and evolution of the curriculums.
Absolutely. Well, that's really exciting. And I'm excited to see where you take that. We talked a little bit about concealed carry. We haven't talked much about rifle work. So what do you consider everyday rifle usage?
Everyday rifle usage is specific to, how you would use a rifle in your everyday life. And some people, it's not every day that they use a rifle. In fact, most people, it's not every day that they use a rifle. And the term, the naming convention every day, is really, it means if you were to be able, if you were to use it, like your job depended on it, like your life depended on it, or if you carry a rifle every day with you. We carry handguns with us, most of us, every day. You might carry a rifle with you, or there might come a time where you do have an everyday rifle. But everyday rifle is really based around basic rifle performance. And, if you're a hunter, competition shooter, or just somebody that wants to get better with a rifle for home defense, or if something, God forbid, should happen internally, with America, you have the basic mechanical skills to run your gun in multiple different environments. That's what everyday rifle is based around. It's an athlete's approach. So we break down things. We talked earlier about part practice and whole practice. That's something that's taught, in kinesiology school. Is my area of focus is probably a little bit different than your area of focus, in the sense that I am completely obsessed with skill acquisition, with learning things. And so motor learning is where I concentrate my efforts. And that's a really fancy way of just saying, I study how to learn things. And inside of that, you have part practice, which is breaking down a skill into digestible, palatable pieces, and then making improvements until you can eventually practice the whole skill. So you could have 5 things, like gripping a handgun. For instance, you could break down gripping a handgun into multiple different pieces. For instance, this is a lot different. I'm just going to go like this. This is different than that. And if you're inexperienced and you don't have the kind of awareness that you need, it's easy to miss the differentiation between that, especially when you're doing something like this and building the whole grip all at once. You miss little details. So part practice really concentrates on those little small skills: hand placement, angle, force. And so that's the approach that I take to training, is breaking things down. And it's not unlike wrestling. It's exactly like wrestling. Coaches will show you an entire technique, and then they will break it down. And good jiu-jitsu coaches, instructors, they'll do the same thing. They'll break down the technique into very small chunks and then help you refine it. I take the same approach to shooting instruction, which is a little different, because I actually want you to come away from the course. Not that other instructors don't. They absolutely do. Like, there's so many good instructors out there. It's just kind of how my brain works and how I taught myself and how I prefer to be taught. So, but that's a small glimpse into what rifle and then also my training philosophy is like.
Absolutely. No, I followed every bit of that. I love it. So as someone who's slowly tapping into rifle work in preparation for the tactical games, I'm always curious to see what else is out there as far as learning with a rifle. So far, it's just been trial by fire, and then Mike Seeklander offering me his time because, you know, we work together, so it's kind of hard for him to say no to me. So just doing some work with him. He asked me the other day before we went out to the range, there's like a police range out here in Owasso. He was like, how much do you know? And I was like, yes. And he was like, oh, all right then. Yeah. All right. So it was good. But I'm glad that you offer that. It's lovely. It's not very common, I've learned, like, especially the area I teach in Northwest Arkansas. They were really excited when I came to town because they were like, great, can you teach a rifle class? And I was like, no, I cannot. Yeah. So it's nice to know that you offer that. And have you already mentioned where you're based out of currently? Do you want to talk a little bit about like where you'll be available, or is that something that's kind of for down the road? No worries if not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm based in Arizona right now. I live in the Southwest. There's potential for me to be moving here pretty soon to the Midwest, but I own a mobile training company. So I travel like California, Oregon, Texas, Maryland, Indiana. You know, I'm going to be all over the place, and I have 2025 that I'm working on the schedule right now. So right now I do... all of my classes are local in Arizona and some in California, because I'm building this company, you know, from the ground up, which is a little bit more difficult than some might realize. And I want to do it right. You know, I want to make sure that people are taken care of and that the customer base, you know, the people that we're serving are taken care of and they get the best quality content. So all of my courses right now, I've been working with some Border Patrol guys, working with a couple churches. But 2025 is going to be a really big year for us. I'm really excited. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about it.
I'm excited for you. It's going to be great. You'll have to come back on and talk about how things are going a little bit down the way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I'd love to kind of pivot because we had some fun topics come up right before we started the episode. So one was hunting and one was camping, outdoorsy stuff. As someone... let's just start here. I'm just going to wing it. Here we go. As someone who is starting to get into the camping life, and by getting into, I mean, I've never camped. Yeah. I'm building out my 4Runner. I'm about to just hit the road and go. We had a very humbling discussion, at least for me, before this started. So what would you say?
Yeah.
I don't know. First of all, just tell us a little bit about like you have outdoorsman in your profile, I believe, on social. So what do you mean by that, first of all? And then I'd love to kind of dive into that topic a little bit with you.
Yeah, I'm from, obviously, you know, the Midwest, Indiana. Yes. And I grew up in the woods. Like, if I could have lived out there, I would have. But people would have been questioning and probably called child services on my parents.
You're like one of those feral children? I
was. Yeah. I mean, I grew up. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was I'm the only one in my family that hunts. Like, my dad doesn't hunt. My brothers don't hunt. Like, they don't. Nobody hunts in my family, and and it's always kind of been that way. I've always been that way. You know, I'm the only one in my family that's gone to the military. I'm the only wrestler in my family. At this point, I know that I'm adopted. I just haven't, you know, come out and said it to my folks.
Sorry, that's not funny. Wait, do you actually know?
No, I'm not adopted. I have a twin sister. Like, I'm not a. I'm not. No, I was just kidding.
It's a good joke. My best friend is adopted, so I try not to, I don't know. What if I had laughed and then you were like, no, I'm gonna stop talking. Okay, so I get it. It was a good joke. I just missed it. So
but yeah, I did grow up in Indiana hunting and fishing, and that was the first love that I had. That's how I got into guns. I mean, that's really how I got into just guns in general. I didn't get into shooting performance until the Navy, but I was always into guns. Some might classify that as a FUD. I think that's what it is a FUD.
Okay.
And I grew up. First thing I did was bought a Remington 870 20 gauge. And I was in the woods every day, building like tree forts and stuff, you know, normal stuff that kids do, you know, pretending like I was a Lord of the Rings character, obviously. Of course. You know, I was obviously Legolas, you know, building bows and like throwing knives and stuff out of wood.
Yeah.
So that's where I started. I started as a waterfowl hunter, hunting ducks and geese and stuff like that. But then when I turned 16, I shot my first deer. And then when I, like, no pun intended, got the taste for deer, that was it. I was like, I'm a deer hunter. I'm a bow hunter and I'm a deer hunter. And I started combining that with my love because I used to follow Bear Grylls, Les Stroud, Steve Irwin, R.I.P. And I loved those dudes. I wanted to be a conservationist. Like that's what I really wanted to do is be a conservationist and, work. I saw myself being like the next crocodile hunter. I wanted to be just like him. But I combined that because I was in the woods practicing that stuff, on my own. All the bushcraft stuff that you can think of, I did it from 10 till present day because I thought it was super interesting. I can't flint knap, though. That's something I can't do because there's not a lot of flint. And if there is in Indiana, I don't know where it is.
Flint knap?
Yeah, it's making tools out of stone. So, arrowheads, axes, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
But I will learn it. I will learn it because
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly interesting.
I believe you based on how you said you learn. You're going to do it. There's no doubt.
But that's
awesome.
My kind of, and so my hunting, just like, a lot of people's, it's evolved. It's gone from, I go out with my friends, dad and him to, I just did a Montana hunt a couple of years ago. I was just in Colorado kind of prepping for this year, which the Colorado, I forgot to tell you the Colorado story.
Yes, please tell me the Colorado story. I need to hear it.
So for context, ladies and gentlemen, the question she was asking is, you're taking your first trip in November, aren't you?
October, November time. Yes. Okay. That's the goal. I want it to be cooler, but some places are too cold in November. So yeah.
So I've been doing this for a while, and I am, I'm by no means am I the end all be all. I have my system. I have the way that I like to do things. It works for me. And I'm also a gear tester. Like I do a lot of different things with different guns, knives, headlamps, tents. Like that's just what I do. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it after I get out of the woods and I look back on it and I'm like, that was cool. That was, whatever. But in the moment, it sucks. And Colorado was super tough this year. We did 3 days, which isn't even that long of a trip. And I think it was 5.5 miles in. And I think we found a shortcut to do 3 miles or 3.5 miles out. So it wasn't like we were, going crazy deep or anything like that. But I brought my dog who he's 8. He's never camped, let alone backpacked. Like camping, you could have your car parked next to you and like be drinking beer and this be fine, but backpacking is different because once you get out to a certain point, like you're on your own and whatever you brought's what you got. I did not think about him at all.
Oh no.
So we got up to the campsite and we're like, it's this beautiful lake. We're 9,000 some odd feet up, elevation. It's like, It's gorgeous. It's like we saw moose and deer and elk. And like, it was so much fun. And also incredibly, I was so paranoid and anxious because my dog is a bit of a dipshit. He's a black lab who loves everything and thinks that everything loves him. And so I didn't bring him a sleeping pad. I didn't bring him any sleeping gear at all because I'm like, he's got to sleep on the ground. He's fine. Well, it's all rock up there. I didn't think about it.
Oh no.
So I gave him my sleeping pad. And I'm like, here you go, buddy. You can sleep on this and, you'll be fine. And I'll sleep in my hammock because I brought a hammock because it's not going to be that cold, and I'll be fine. I'm not taking into consideration that at the time, this was only a couple months ago. It was 100, actually, this might have only been like 6 weeks ago. It's like 115 degrees. It's like 115 degrees in Arizona at the time, 110, and I was doing obviously a lot of work outside, in the elements, doing shooting and stuff like that. So I'm fairly used to the heat. Well, we got up there and it was 75, 80 degrees maybe during the day, and it would get down to like 50 at night. And I froze. I froze. We got hit with a windstorm. My dog had my sleeping pad, so like I had no insulation underneath me. And I just like ended up at the end of the night, hopped out of my hammock, split the foam pad in two, and like he had his side and I had my side, and we just cuddled and that was the way we started the night. And my buddy was razzing me. He's like, first time? I'm like, no, it's just like, I just made a mistake. I
Yeah.
didn't think about my dog and other areas of preparation that I should have. But that's why you do it. There's no reason to be afraid of mistakes. And no matter how long you do stuff, there's oversights. Or bringing a new piece of gear doesn't work for you. Like hammocks, I don't have a ton of hammock experience. I've slept in them, a handful of trips. So I've probably spent 20 nights in hammocks.
Okay.
I don't really like them that much. Like I like them, but for some reason, like they hurt my hip, and I don't know why that is.
That makes sense.
And some people would disagree with this. I like to sleep on my ruck on the ground. That's like the most comfort that I can find, as an outdoorsman. That's the best night's sleep I can get, is on the ground with my head on my backpack. That's for me. Some people, they can't do that. They're like, no. Like right. I've got to have my 2 air mattresses or whatever. I've got to have a foam pad and a blow up. So I'm a side sleeper.
Yeah.
But that was a tough 3 days, because that was my first trip after my knee surgery. I was probably 7 months post operation, and I wasn't ready. I was not ready for it. So
that would be really tough. Yeah. And I don't own any pets, but I would probably not think of what to do for a dog beforehand. But now you know. And you survived.
I did,
and, yeah. And your dog survived, it sounds like.
He just had a couple like elbow hot spots from the rocks, and I felt so bad because like he didn't care. He's carefree. He's a lab.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot, but that leads into so many other avenues, and I guess it's just what you take away. But if you're somebody that's a bug out person, or and you do 3 days with another life that you have to, if some people have dogs and pets that they want to bring with, if they have to bug out, go bug out with your dog, if you will. Bug out, go backpack for 3 days and see what happens. And if your dog gets sick or gets hurt, little boo-boos here and there, like that's a really good learning experience if you have animals that you plan on bringing with you. And so there's so much that you can gain by just going out, and you're probably going to be looked at maybe your first time as inexperienced, but people that are really experts, they'll understand and they'll help you. So
yeah,
I think you're going to be okay. But for those who maybe have never done it, so you're going to Mount Rainier, which is
okay. It was suggested by a friend. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if that'll be my first trip. My first trip will be out to the Ozarks. I live in Northwest Arkansas, so I'm thinking about just doing a small trip to the Ozarks and just kind of testing it out, testing the waters before doing anything too crazy.
If I was somebody going out for the first time, I would go out like you're doing it the right way, going with a group of people. And if you don't have a group of people, at the very least, have a plan. You don't have to have a cell phone, a satellite phone, or anything. It's a good idea if you do, but make sure people know exactly where you're going. Make sure, exactly. Yeah. Have signaling gear and know how to use that signaling gear, because signal mirrors, they only work out in the open. If you're under heavy canopy, you might not be seen. Same thing with whistles. Whistles are limited to a certain range, and if it's extremely windy or otherwise, it's going to be harder to pinpoint your location. Flares, there's so many different levels, and this is going to be, it's kind of part of my YouTube channel, or it's going to be is covering all the different skills,
please,
that you need to be truly self-sufficient. And the punchline of it all is really like, you're never going to be good enough. And that's why you need community. Like, I can't do it all. I was talking with my best friend, and I was talking to him yesterday because, I was going through recently like a really big transition in my life. And he says, isn't it crazy how you can feel like the whole world's falling apart, and like in no time at all, you can feel reassured, and you can feel like everything's going to be okay and work out your way. I'm like, yeah, it is.
I relate to that right now. Yeah.
And so I was like, that's so crazy you say that. He's like, oh, every day. It's like every week. Like that's for a long time, that's how it felt. I'm like, maybe that's just life.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just life and how it is. And he said, like, I don't know what I would do without you. Like, if I didn't have you, I have no idea what I would do. Just to
That's
have.
so sweet.
Yeah, he's a big sweetie.
Yeah. No, verbal. What is it? Positive reinforcement. I know my best friend Lisa and I, we like almost every day we're like, I'm not interested in doing this life without you. Like, you need community. I agree.
You do.
I love that you made that part of this. I'm starting to think I shouldn't go alone. So.
No, I wouldn't go alone because, okay, so if things go south, like I'll use myself as an example. I would consider myself in the realm of all things bushcraft, outdoor, backpacking, sustainment, all that. I'm probably like mid-level, like when it comes to, which is I have a lot of capability and confidence in the woods, but there's so much to know. I would say I'm middle of the road. I've been doing this in my entire adult life and as a kid. If something goes south, in the woods, I have a lot of skills that can buy me a lot of time, but there's still things that are out of my control and out of my ability. For instance, medical. Like, I'm not a medical.
Yeah.
You could have any number of medical issues, broken bones, blood poisoning, parasites, etc., which can be mitigated through other skills that you have, proper water treatment, infiltration. But there's all kinds of things that could go wrong, and relying solely on yourself, I mean, it's, unless you're going, in a place where there's no real predators. That's why I could do everything as a kid alone. Yeah. It's because Indiana doesn't have bears and lions. We have coyotes. Okay. And like a group of coyotes isn't going to do anything to you. Like, even if they're curious, you could shoot them and they'll run away. Like, they're cowards. They're not.
Right.
But like wolves or mountain lions or bears, like when we were in Colorado, or moose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different thing. That's no pun intended. That's a completely different animal, literally.
Have you had any encounters with any of those types of predators?
Not close ones. Not like ones where I've had like healthy scares where like all of a sudden you come out of the tree line and there's an elk, standing there, or a moose, or I've seen, when I say at a distance, I shouldn't say close enough to where they could still get at you. But I've never like turned a corner and boom, there's a bear. It's always been within like 100 yards or so, which is, I will keep it right there. That's fine with me.
Right.
Like, I'm cool with that.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Unless I'm hunting
that's
it.
Great.
Right. It's better off. You're better off that way. I've had close encounters with other animals like owls and coyotes and raccoons. I've had an owl land like 2 feet from me in a tree stand. And that was scary. I was like, oh shit, there's a raptor.
Yeah, they get like massive and yeah.
It's so funny how things look at you there's different things that look at you in the wild, Yeah. Some animals are curious. Some animals are like, can I, they look at you like, can I eat you?
Yeah. I think I told you women get that look from men all the time. So I think we get that. I know I'm reusing that joke, but it's true. So
it's true.
Yeah. FTS, you know what I mean? But anyway, no, that's really, really cool. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I definitely have a lot to prepare for. And I will also have to I'll have to think about my self-defense weapon and like what that will look like if I, know.
Well, so let me throw this in there. Since you're going to take a self-defense weapon, something to consider is that animals are not humans. Humans are very fragile. Not all animals are very fragile. There's some animals, like mountain lions, for instance. Somebody on the internet is going to disagree with this, but this is the truth. Mountain lions are very fragile to bullets. Very fragile. Like, it's not an uncommon thing for people to shoot with small calibers for mountain lion hunting. Like, they're very fragile. Bears are not fragile. Like, moose are not fragile. So shooting a hollow point round in dangerous game, or like predators isn't always the best choice. Usually people shoot solid core projectiles, and usually if it's bear country, like if you're going into Washington, you're going to have black bears, so you won't need anything like crazy. I don't know, do you own a 10 mil?
No.
I don't think for black bear I don't think you need a 10 mil. I don't think you do. So if you have a 9 mil, but I would consider buying defense ammo for dangerous game, for bears, solid core projectiles, because you want deep penetration, and they're dense animals. So you don't want a hollow point that expands and stops short. You want it to go as far into them as possible to kill them.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay. Yeah. Noted. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Do people like take shotguns or anything like that?
Yeah. A 12-gauge shotgun will kill anything that walks North America.
Okay.
So if you have a shotgun, if you have a 12-gauge and you feel confident with it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm on it. Add to cart.
It's not as wieldable as a handgun, though. Like, unless you're like physically carrying it, slung or something where you could do a really quick ready up. I still think a pistol's probably the better option. It weighs less. There's all kinds of different factors that go into it, and more capacity. Yeah. So, but 12 gauges ain't no joke.
Okay. Yeah, shotgun, I mean, here's like rifle knowledge, and then shotgun, I don't know, they're pretty stacked pretty low.
Yeah.
I'm very far from that. Yeah. I'm excited though. I mean, it's a whole journey I can look forward to getting into, but it's good to know that the pistol will be good enough for maybe what I'm doing. But I'll take people. I'm just going to take so many people with me that the animal is going to be like, oh yeah, too many people to fight. So
sure,
it's going to work.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm totally joking.
Yeah. There's strength in numbers for sure.
Right.
I'm not gonna
excited for you to start your channel.
What? I'm not gonna scare you with like a horror story. So,
do you have one?
No. Like, not. It's not my story.
Oh,
it's just stories of people that. Like, there's just stories of people, like 3 friends, and they go and they have their dogs, and then all of a sudden, like, one of their dogs go missing, and they're like, oh no, it must have ran off. And these are people that are, and I'm not biased towards backpackers. Backpackers at times can be only concerned with the activity of backpacking. What I mean by that is, like, they're not worried about, why do you? I had a friend who's a backpack hunter, and he doesn't care about survival or sustainment. Like, everything is going to go according to plan, or if it doesn't, big deal. There's no, like, it's not in the back of his mind that we could get lost, you could break. And it's funny because on this trip he broke his phone. He shattered his phone screen, which was our only real source of navigation.
Oh no.
And a lot of this is just my fault because I trusted him. I was like, tell me what it be, you can give me the navigation plan, and whatever, we'll figure things out. I just it's like, and we all did a really poor job planning the trip because we got complacent. We've done it so much. We're like, yeah, whatever, we'll go out there. It happens, it happens. And he ended up shattering his phone, on the exfil, or, on the way out. And we got back, obviously. But there's people like my friend who don't think about the preparedness side of it. And he's like, oh, that's a big saw you got. And I was like, well, your little pocket saw is great for little baby campfires and stuff like that. Like, but this saw, which actually the funny thing is it doesn't even weigh that much more than his. I think it weighs 4 ounces more than his. I'm like, I can cut 10-inch logs with this, and we can have a real fire, or we could like build a significant structure with this.
Right.
Or somebody that brings an axe. Backpackers are only concerned with like backpacking, so they'll just bring this. They'll just have like this little, they go, oh yeah, here, this is my knife, and I'm like,
right.
Cool.
Right.
Like, that's not enough in my book. It's really like, I'm gonna have a fixed blade. I'm gonna have multiple ways to light a fire. I'm gonna have multiple ways to treat water. It's the PACE plan. PACE being the primary, alternate, contingency, and then emergency. in an ideal world, that's what you would build your plan. You'd have a pace plan for the critical things. So like water, communications, navigation. You'd have 4 different things. So if things got totally screwed, you'd have some backup measures. But most people don't do that. They're just like, yeah, we're going to go backpacking for a week. It'll be fine. I'll carry a 25-pound pack. I'm like, okay.
Right.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna give you a phone call like a couple weeks out and just be like, here's my plan. Where are my holes? Where are my gaps in knowledge? And yeah.
for sure.
You should do that series. You absolutely should.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's coming. It's all coming. It's just in due time. Video productions. But to do it, right, to do it as best quality as that, I can do it, just takes time. And you know that. You know that more than anybody.
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. You'll think you're like good to go, and then you're like a month later it releases or something. It's just how it works. And then yeah, absolutely. On the camping topic, I do want to ask this before we get off of it. Do you have like a system in place for how you prepare for a trip? Do you have boxes you check, research you do in a certain way?
Yeah, not in a certain way, but definitely fantastic question, by the way, because the planning part is one of the most, if not the most important part of a trip is planning. So I'll just rattle off some kind of like high level things that I do that I try and look for. A water plan is one of them. So if you're planning a trip and let's say it's 5 miles in, you have enough water, hopefully, to get you all the way in. I wouldn't carry, in fact, 5 miles in, if it takes you 2 or 3 hours, depending on your terrain, you don't even need any water to get in. You could do it. You just raw dog it, I guess, as we would say, but I wouldn't, because you're, going to be dehydrated, and you've got to have a water plan in place, meaning you've got to have somewhere that for a fact there's water you can filter so that you can stay hydrated. But what some people don't even consider is that they're bringing dehydrated food. So you need significantly more water than you think you do to rehydrate your food, to stay clean, to brush your teeth, to give to your dog, those things, liabilities. That's why you just like set them free, before you head out, you're just like, okay, you're free. No.
Yeah.
And then you're drinking water.
Sounds legit.
And you drink more water. Like, so for instance, for me at elevation, I drink significantly more water than I would normally, at a lower elevation. That's kind of different for some people because at elevation and during the cold, some people don't drink as much. I drink more, and I also go to the bathroom more, and so there's this whole thing, and it's very much like you've got to learn what your body does. When I get into the woods, my body kind of knows what it needs to do. I don't get pain, even though I'm not eating as much, or I'm burning more calories than I would normally. Like I don't get hunger pains. Like I'm not that hungry in the wood. Like my body's kind of, acclimated to some of those trips. So I sleep a little sounder, things like that. But a water plan is definitely going to be on the list of things to do. A navigation plan is another one. Like you need to know where you're going, what obstacles are in the way. Like if you're crossing and there's no replacement for boots on the ground, you could do as much e-scouting as you want, but you never know what it's going to look like when you get there in person. Case in point, we're like, we're going to go through this meadow in Colorado. We're going to go through this meadow, and it's like 3 miles of fallen timber. And I don't mean fallen timber like there's some brush and stuff in the way. There are thousands of fallen trees, so like all around us. And like I've got to lift my dog over it. Then I've got to climb over it or under it for like a mile. We did that. It was exhausting. And we thought it was going to be this pretty little meadow. And sometimes it just doesn't work out that way,
Right.
So a navigation plan is another one. And then, also, gosh, there's so much because this is your first trip. So like I want to talk to you about like site selection and like how do you pick a site, because my friend and I, he wanted to sleep on the water, and I was like, I don't want to sleep on the water. And he's like, why not? We'll be right here. And I was like, yeah, but what else comes to the water? Everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Every other thing that lives and every other thing that that is alive that lives here. Like, we are guests.
Yeah.
We're guests. So I don't prefer camping on the water. We did. He was insistent that's what we do. So it's fine. I didn't care, But there's a lot to site selection, things like that. And depending on where you are, too,
Okay.
might not be that hard. You might be in a flat area. Those are, and food. I don't know if you know how much food you eat, how many calories you eat in a day, if you have an idea. So packing food, and I like diversity in food. So I like things that are ready to go. I like some things that are, you have to cook, back and forth. Because if I have to move, or if I don't feel like cooking, for instance, I buy things that, I can eat while I'm moving. So I always do Lifesaver gummies. Like, I'll buy like 2 packs and eat Lifesaver gummies because it's just sugar.
Okay. Yeah.
And, I do beef jerky. I do, ramen sometimes, even though I'm not a huge ramen guy. Some, Stinger waffles. Those are a staple. Mm-hmm. Got to do Stinger waffles. But yeah, there's tons of different ways, trail mix, etc. And if you go when it's cold, like I've had times where I bring like beans, and it doesn't really matter because you end up putting it on the fire. But I thought that I could pop the tin and just like kind of eat them cold, and they're frozen. And I was like, oh, nice, So
right.
like things. So there's ways to preserve your food, like putting them inside your jacket, not beans, but like putting your gummies inside your jacket, or prepping, your next snack, if you will. Like, you eat your snack and then you could go into your ruck and pull out whatever your next little snack is and put it, and then stage it so that in a couple hours it'll be thawed out,
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit more enjoyable to eat. Things like that. Yeah. Just that basic tips and tricks that you get when you do it long enough, making sure you wear some sort of a waterproof head dressing if it's going to be snowing, because your hair will freeze eventually.
Oh,
which is not cool.
No, it does not sound cool.
Like 3 years ago, I was in the northern Arizona mountains, and it was snowing, and it was like 26 degrees, and I was basically not wearing anything because I was so hot. 26 isn't even that cold if you're working pretty hard, and I was working decently hard, so I was like overheating, which is a problem in the cold. You don't want to sweat.
Right.
And I was not wearing my wind shirt, which is waterproof. I was not wearing it because I was just like, I'm so freaking hot. I don't want to like, soak my clothes. So I was starting to kind of whip things off. Nothing on my head. And once I started, getting a fire going and everything, it was still snowing and I was warming up, but my head wasn't drying. So I killed the fire, went to sleep, woke up with a freaking frozen head. Just like stupid stuff. And I was like, oh man. So, I didn't freeze to death.
That's not something I've considered at all. Okay.
But
yeah,
it just wasn't, I just remember touching my head and I was like, what the what's going on here? So
yeah,
that's all part of learning. Like, you won't have it, you won't have it all figured out. Just like shooting, just like grappling, like it's part of the process. And the more you do it, the more you learn. And there's always room. I'll never forget this. My dad, I used to own a company. I used to own a handyman company. And I was talking to him about it, about a certain job that I was doing. I can't even remember what it was, but I said, there's so much to do on this job. I don't know how any one person could do it and be an expert. And he said, even if they are an expert, there's always room for opinion. Mm-hmm. Totally. Like, that's true in everything I've ever done. I wrestle completely different than my friends. I have a totally different style. I shoot a little bit differently than some people. Still, shooting's got less style in it than other things, but,
Right. Absolutely.
But yeah.
I think that's a great takeaway from all of that. And it's encouraging because I just didn't grow up like going in nature much. And I've always wanted to be that person, like when you want to be a morning person, so you just like try waking up early and figuring out what gets you out of bed and,
yep.
What makes your morning more enjoyable. That's kind of what I'm going for. And I also just want to be self-sustained. I want to be able to just like go, mm-hmm. just explore. And so I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. And I'm excited to see your content. Could you release it before November? That'd be like really helpful.
I'll get right on that.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good. No, that's awesome. And I feel like we've just covered so many topics in whole today. This has been an incredible episode, and this will definitely not be the last. I'd love to have you back on, especially as you continue in your journey. Was there anything else you wanted to share today on the podcast, or anything you would like to leave the listeners with?
Oh gosh, you got to put that kind of pressure on me.
Always, yes.
I don't know. Just okay. So this is actually something we talked about this at one of the training courses that I was helping at. Is what's your winning formula in life? And I said that mine is ask yourself and ask others. And I think that's, new shooters, new martial artists, we are afraid to ask. We're afraid to ask for help. Yeah. We're afraid to ask for just advice or opinion, even ask for direction. But don't be afraid to ask. You have to ask questions. And then the other side of that being ask yourself. You need to ask things of yourself. So you were talking about getting up in the morning. That's something that you have to ask of yourself. You have to ask effort. If you maintain the same lifestyle, there's a really beautiful quote by Louis Simmons, and it's shit don't change if shit don't change. Yeah. And that's the truth.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Philosopher. But
I love it.
Yeah, that's what I would leave people with, is ask yourself and ask others.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, that's lovely. And there's a balance between the two. I love it. Yeah, thank you. That was a beautiful message. Some people are just like, I've got nothing. So that was great. And there's nothing wrong with that too, because I do put people on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Really exciting.
I really appreciate this.
No, thank you for coming on. I will have your book linked in the show notes for those interested in checking that out. I highly recommend it. It would also make a really great gift if you know someone is wanting to get into the concealed carry space. I know my middle sister is wanting to do that, and I plan to get her this just so that she can have it for whenever she's ready. It's a great purchase, and I'll also have his website. I'll have Trevor's website linked in the show notes as well if you would like to look into training opportunities with him. Anything else we mentioned in this episode will also be linked. Thank you, Trevor, for coming on. This was so much fun. It's always fun talking to you. And if you all are listening and you would like highlights from this episode, Elisa Hamilton makes those. She'll put them on the Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's not Twitter, I guess. It's X, Livefire, everything. So if you guys want to see us chatting and some B-roll of the areas that we've spoken about today, maybe some B-roll of Colorado, things like that, definitely go check those out at She Shield Pod. All resources are in the show note, including that for Hold My Guns. They are an organization that will hold your firearm for you, or an essential part of the firearm if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, if you're leaving the country and you don't want to leave your family at home with guns, anything like that, extraneous circumstances you need help with. Hold My Guns is a great opportunity for those out there needing that. Thank you for listening, everyone. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Are you ready to step up your shooting game? Introducing Walkers Inc., the pioneers in ear protection for shooting, hunting, and commercial applications. For over 25 years, they've been revolutionizing the industry, ensuring your hearing safety and enhancing your shooting experience. Anytime I'm on the range, indoor or outdoor, I use Walkers ear protection to have crystal clear communication with my fellow shooters. I personally use the disruptors for outdoor shooting and the recons for my indoor shooting adventures. Not only does it protect your hearing, but it also protects you. Being able to communicate with others on the range is vital to personal safety. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your safety when the ultimate goal is better self-protection. With Walkers, you'll experience unparalleled comfort, unmatched innovation, and the industry standard in shooting ear protection. Don't settle for anything less when it comes to your safety and enjoyment on the range. You can save on Walker's ear protection and support the podcast by using code SHESHIELD20, that's SHESHIELD 20 at checkout. Again, that's SHESHIELD20 at checkout.